So across these days, we have a diverse group of firms representing a range of disciplines and forms of practice who have come together to provide our students with an opportunity to gain valuable insight and explore career options. And we recognize the significant role that you, as professionals and industry experts, play in shaping our students' futures. Once again, we extend a warm welcome to all of you, and we thank you for your support of our programs and our students, and hope that you enjoy your time with us. So each year when we're getting together sort of the invitation for this talk, we think a lot about practitioners who challenge us, practitioners who have a great deal of range, and practitioners who our students are studying, who our students are looking at. The exploratory and ever-innovative work of Larry Scarpa, FAIA, fulfills those categories and more. The work of Brooks Scarpa has elevated design and practice and created architectural and legislative solutions to the most pressing societal challenges. Larry is the recipient of the 2024 AIA California Distinguished Practice Award, given in recognition of a career of dedicated commitment to the built environment. He is also the recipient of the 2024 ACSA Gold Medal and the 2024 American Institutes of Architects Gold Medal. 2024 is a really good year for Brooks and Scarpa, the Institute's highest award. He has been featured in dozens of publications and appearances, including Forbes magazine, The Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Time magazine, and on The Oprah Winfrey Show. His firm, Brooks and Scarpa, has received 6 national AIA Coat Top 10 Green Building Awards, more than any firm in the United States. And he is the recipient of multiple international awards, including 32 National AIA Honor Awards, the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum Award in Architecture, and the AIA National Firm Award. He is also the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Awards from Interior Design Magazine and the AIA California Council. Larry has taught at the university level for more than 2 decades and is currently on the faculty at the University of Southern California. To list all of his awards here would take the full hour, so I'll keep that part brief and make sure he has enough time to share his work with you. But I do want to add kind of another characteristic maybe to his list of accolades, and that's, as I know him, as one of the most generous people I have ever met. Generous as an architect, generous as an educator, and generous as a mentor. I have been fortunate to know Larry for many years. I first met him in 1992 after I moved from North Carolina to Los Angeles to go to graduate school at SCI-Arc. I distinctly remember our first meeting with a friend of mine at his house in Venice Beach. And I wanted to share 3 moments just really from that day, because it's kind of interesting the way that a single day or a first meeting can build over time, and this is really what I've been thinking about. One, he's very funny, and I hope that you'll have a chance to talk with him and meet him after his lecture. As we know, a great sense of humor often comes with a willingness to take risks, but also an invitation, an implied closeness of something shared. Standing over burgers on the grill, admiring his driveway basketball court, Larry spoke passionately about the game, its movement, its rhythm, but with a wry smile, he admitted that no matter how much he loved it, he remained, as he put it, a prisoner of gravity. That resonated with me. In the house, his bookshelves were modest, built on a budget. This is 30 plus years ago. But there was something different about his, and I took note. On one hand, the materials were familiar, readily available, yet on another, the composition was unexpected, beautiful, and minimal, transforming the ordinary into something remarkable. It was a lesson and a way of making that I have seen expand in his career over the past 30 years. And finally, art. On these shelves, I noticed a book about the artist Voth, a mysterious artist working at the scale of architecture. Now, he may be mysterious because this was in '92 and we didn't have the internet and the book was in German and we could really just look at the drawings and look at the images and try and kind of build a narrative about what was going on. But the drawings and photographs spoke for themselves, and we spent the better part of the evening talking about kinds of practice grounded in deep time, yet reaching and full of wonder. These moments were just the beginning, small glimpses into a way of being in architecture that is generous, inclusive, and always evolving. Over the years, his work has only deepened in quality, expanded in scope, and enriched the field, while always retaining the spirit of generosity that defines him. And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Larry Scarpa.
Thank you, Jim. That's the best. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I remember not too long ago putting together a presentation and going through everything I have and really working really hard to muster up enough to talk about for about 20 minutes. A lot has changed since then. Now I have to kind of edit things down. And, I'd like to, as Jim mentioned, talk about particular ideas. And I'm going to talk tonight about something I've thought about for a while and frankly have struggled with. I consider myself an artist. I'm interested in the arts. But I also work for a population that lives on the street. And this idea of beauty has been in my mind for a long time, and I'm so interested in it, but trying to make meaning of it. And I think in today's world, it's almost taboo to talk about this idea of beauty as if there's something morally wrong with it, something superficial that is not, meaningful to us. Nonetheless, beauty contributes to our human experience in unique and compelling ways. We've worked for people that may not think they know art, but it matters to them. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is why that matters and the contradictions. And it's taken me 3 decades to start to come to terms with this idea, and I'm going to try and articulate why the beauty matters. Beauty is deeply intertwined with human values, social structures, and individual well-being. Its relevance can be seen in the way societies and cultures celebrate, pursue, and define beauty. It impacts almost every aspect of life, from art and architecture to daily routines and social norms. Physical beauty takes many forms. It's self-justifying. It really can't be argued with. It may never be denigrated by someone's appeal to something higher or more spiritual. For most of us, when we hear the word beauty, physical beauty is what comes to mind. Now, while that beauty is real, powerful, and can transform the heart, there are other kinds of beauty equally as powerful and transformative. Moral beauty is connected to the greater good, doing something beyond mere physical or emotional beauty. Nonetheless, it has the power and memorable experience and has lasting effects on our well-being. This is a tenant in one of our disabled veterans housing. This is Kent. He's formerly homeless. And a study from the National Institute of Health finds that when people give and help others in need, it activates regions of the brain associated with pleasure, social connections, and trust. So I asked myself, which is really just, what matters most? And the answer really lies in the creator, the storyteller. And that's what we do. We're visual storytellers. We tell stories about beauty. This is on the right, a painting by Picasso, and this is one of the characters that shows up at Burning Man. And I look at them both, and they're both art, they're both inventive, they're both exploratory, and this is that area where I've struggled to find myself. And it's a complex story. For me, it contains contradictions, struggles, and inconsistency. I believe there's a fine line between what is seen as beautiful and peculiar, between fine art and popular culture. And what I've been interested in is that moment where the two commingle. I'm interested in being both the teacher and the student, and as Jim mentioned, to find the extraordinary within the ordinary. I'm going to just show you a couple things in that area. Whoops. I really try not to invent anything in my design. I just look in front of me and I try to see the beauty that exists in what we take for granted or even never considered as beautiful. I look at this and I go, wow, look at the color, look at the light. To me, that has magic to it. It's right there. And too often we try to invent things where if we take the time to look what's right in front of us, you can find magic. And that's really what I try to do. So we've done many projects with such things like this as Dixie cups. And this was one of my first commissions, my real corporate commissions. And I had this idea, but when I met my client at his building, he started to ask me about what I was thinking, and I didn't want to tell him because I didn't want to be fired on our first meeting. But somehow he got it out of me, and I said, I'm thinking Dixie cups. And he said, you are not putting Dixie cups in my building. So I went back to the office and I made this mock-up and took a picture, sent it to him. And I get the email back with the capital wow and the exclamation points, what is it? And I said, it's Dixie cups. And away we went. So we made this space where it was something I never liked to do. He had so many offices that the building perimeter was completely covered in private offices. So I looked for a way to kind of create light and share light in the building, and I came up with this idea of making the oculuses that allowed light to penetrate into the building. This is CNC milled. The Dixie cups pop in and out. And, there it is. So the owner made me give him like 2,000 extra Dixie cups because he was worried about it. And from time to time I go by, I stop in here to see how the building's doing. And, I go in there one day and the whole place is white Dixie cups. Another time it's green Dixie cups. The guy who didn't want Dixie cups in his building is now playing with our building. That's like the best thing ever. He's engaged with the building, and that has an effect on people when they engage in your work. And we don't think of that enough. Another building I did was using ping pong balls. And it's also kind of interesting when you work with different materials and you call up a manufacturer and say, I want to order 30,000 ping pong balls. You know, these people, you know, what do you do? I mean, I'm an architect. They first thing they sense is industrial espionage. They want to know what you're doing, why you're doing it. And it turns out they wind up helping us do the design. And for me, this became a really serious way to solve a problem. I had done many edit studios, and every editor wanted their studio completely black and absent of natural light. And you know, that always puzzled me. Why would you want to work in a place that has no natural light? Well, glare was the issue. So through a whole bunch of studies, we found that the ping pong ball would allow light through in a way that did not have glare. It kind of just pixelated the screen a little. So we were then doing these studios using these apertures with ping pong balls. And you know, you get, when people walk in, they see this and, whoops. Okay, something's a little out of sequence here, but we'll roll with it. They see this, idea, or they see the light, and they are taken to it, but when they come right up to it and they realize it's something familiar, something that they know, it even heightens their experience. It makes it even more meaningful to them. And what I've learned with is that over time, this idea that if you deal with light, it really has a great effect on people and what we do. That part which the light has this idea, I think, that evokes what I would term emotional beauty. And this is a cathedral in Cordoba from 988 AD in Spain. And emotional beauty is very different from physical beauty. Emotional beauty is not the beauty of a sunset or a great painting, but it's the beauty of a particular expression. Light has an unforgivable impact on our perception of space and time. Like physical beauty, there's a divine quality of emotional beauty and light. It leaves memories that are rarely forgotten, whether or not we remember what the physical object looks like. When I worked for Paul Rudolph in New York right out of school, he would make drawings like the one you see on the left, and that's the actual building built on the right, a chapel in the Boston Government Center. He would try to draw the light. And I didn't understand this at the time when I worked for him, but he kind of saw the power in the emotion and the light, and he would do these drawings for all of his buildings. This is the Tuskegee Chapel, done in 1967 in Tuskegee, Alabama. And you can see his drawings were really not what the building looked like, but he was trying to kind of capture it spatially. And the buildings are marvelous. They take your breath away when you go inside. And he used to explain this as light coming in while the space escaped. He also went further to say it was a balance and tension where two things would oppose each other, but would to balance in this kind of serene quality. And I think when you go there, you feel that. I always look for that in my own work too. And, this was one morning driving to get my coffee in the morning, and I saw them painting this bus station right by my house. And, I was like, wow, look at that. Look at the color, the light. And, I immediately got to the office and started work on this idea of light and how it broadcasts color and broadcasts through materials. We work in our office in a bit of what I call a parallel universe. We have a pretty traditional practice, but at the same time, we have a whole nother set of things going on which have no beginning and no end. So like this, we started to look at broken glass, marbles, recycled material, and I got infatuated with what you see in the bottom right-hand corner. These are plexiglasses or little acrylics. You've probably seen them at the hardware store. They come in 1,000 colors. You see them on the ring, but there's not one nice color. And I started to just overlay them to see if I could make a nice color, and these patterns started to merge. So, I'm in the middle of a project, and I kind of changed course to say, what could I do? So we made these apertures in offices. They're 8 layers of that acrylic that are backlit by skylights that broadcast the light into the space. And, it's kind of amazing when you go there, the quality that you get from something that simple and that thin. Making these things is, I looked at also wood, and I was interested in how wood or how you can broadcast light through wood. And we just made things, that I had no idea what we're doing. We were just making them. And I got onto this idea of what now is pretty simple with CNCing, but came up with this idea which I termed liquid wood. And the idea that I wanted to capture wood, which we often think of as an inert element like a building material, or as a tree, something that's just organic, but I wanted to kind of capture that moment in between. So we started to kind of work on these things, and at the same time we were getting our work, we started to get, every time someone would look at it, they would see it as complicated or expensive, so we started working directly with vendors who really saw this as more easy and simple. So this is another edit studio. This is the edit studios are in there. You can kind of see the little shadows or cracks. Those are the doors into the studio. My client loves it because he tells his clients go to Studio 2 and points at the wall, and they look very puzzled. And every single person that goes there touches this, right? And, socially I'll be around and people will ask me, what do you do? I tell them I'm an architect, I work in the film industry. Oh, really? What have you done? And I'll try to explain it by name, and then I said, well, we did this studio with a wood wall. They go, I know it, I've been there, that place is great. And again, it's like once someone touches your work, they never forget it. And that's what we try to do a lot with our work. We try to leave something behind, whether the building is there or not. And all of you, I think if you just closed your eyes for a moment and think of a place that's special to you, it could be from your childhood or from some time ago, and when you close your eyes, you can see it so clear, like it's yesterday. But when you go there and visit it, it always looks different than you remember. And it's the memory that stays with you. The memory is always there whether there's a building or not. That little moquette, turned into this, a dressing room. So we have these things sitting around in our office, and often enough a client will ask, what is that? And then I have to kind of explain to them a bit like I'm doing here, what I'm doing there. Go, oh, that's very interesting. Can I have one? And, I'll say, I think so. So in this case, they needed a dressing room we were doing in their office. And so we just started building it full size. Here it is going to the site. They're about to move in. You can kind of see doesn't make the greatest dressing room there with nothing around it. And I had not figured that out at this point. And my client called me up and said, hey, I see that we're bringing the dressing room in. What are we putting around it? And I said, I've got it figured out, don't worry. Well, I had no idea what I was doing. I was trying to figure out what to do, and I thought about it, and the calls kept coming, and I was about to fess up to my client that I really didn't know what I was doing. And I'm driving home, and right by my house is the guy, William B. Leaf. He's an auto guy. He's been fixing my Volvo for decades. For the first time ever, I see a sign on his building that says, "Will shrink wrap anything." And I pulled right in. I'm like, William, you do shrink wrap? You know, he laid it on me. You know, he's like, I shrink wrap these boats. I do stuff for the military. Well, I went right back to my office, got that maquette, which was about this big, and I asked if he could shrink wrap it. Well, I came back, you know, the next day, and he was a lot more humbled. When I got there, it didn't quite work out. So I talked to him and asked him why it didn't work. And in about an hour conversation, I convinced him that we could do it. I modified our big mock-up, and away he went. So this is him doing it. We made it a bit like a pig on a spit, heated up the room, and there it is. And, you know, you don't get this by just drawing it. I don't consider myself, you know, a wild person who just does things, but I call them a bit more calculated risk-taking, and bring our clients along with us. But the kind of magic of this is like what unfolds with it, and the light has the big part to do with it. We're working on this project right now. This is at the University of Florida. It's a new College of Design, Construction, and Planning. And, you know, designing for designers is always difficult. But I thought, again, a key thing for us was like how we work and how we work in light. And that was a big deal for how we dealt with this. So it's an addition onto an existing building from the 1980s. This is it right now, about where we are. It completes kind of the form of the building, extends the building, has a green space. But what's important here is like when you look at it, it looks like a solid building. And in fact, from one direction, it really is. And this is looking north from the south. But when you look the other way, the building is completely glass. So what you get is you get a space that when you're looking north is bathed in like soft light. And then when you look the other way to the south, it's actually solid. And so the walls, which are angled, are pinup spaces that will be bathed in kind of light. And so this, we're hoping to have this like kind of beautiful and ephemeral light quality that you work in. And this is what it's about where we are right now. In Chicago, outside of Chicago, we finished this house recently. And this has a different kind of light. We made a brick facade or brick building. Ironically, this client saw one of our homes we had done and wanted a steel house. And I was like very disappointed. I'm like, it's Chicago, you have to do brick. And I convinced him that we could do brick in a kind of interesting way. And again, I thought about this idea of light and how, you know, how a building accepts light, you know, and like what it can do when light hits the building. So we work really hard on what you see from the street that you see in this movie up here. The building, like a lot of architects, I love moving things, but moving buildings never work. But I thought, what about if the people moved and the building is static? And so we came up with this idea to make the kind of viewer experience depend on how they move by it. So it's a little courtyard building. We drew every single brick on the building. These are some of our drawings. And once again, once the contractor sees it, they see our drawings, they go, this is going to be really expensive. And of course, we're ready with like these drawings to explain how to do it. And then once they see it, they understand, they go, oh, it's not that difficult. And, you know, away we go. So here it is. There are columns of brick that kind of twist as you go up. And you get this really kind of interesting moving facade.
You're not really sure when you look at the front of the house that it's actually a house, because there's nothing house-like about that front wall. It's beautiful, it's geometric, but it's not traditionally residential.
The building, you're able to see through it at points, but as you move, it will literally close up.
I'm trying to think how best to express it.
In some ways, it's like cloaked or not there. So it's there and it's not there.
People are stopped in their tracks just looking at the brick screen. They find it so interesting and unique.
I guess it's mysterious. People, when they drive down the street, they sort of do a little double take because they can't see through it, and then they can. And so they stop their car and they look, and then they back up and they pull forward and back up, and you know, like they're trying to see through the building before they take off.
And these are pictures, these are not modified in any way. These are the light hitting the facade. And it's the light, because of the way the bricks are arranged, it lights from both the back and the front of the facade simultaneously. And so you get this kind of really interesting quality of light that really makes people stop. Like, it's so interesting to me that people, the owner tells me the people drive down a street and they stop right in front of his house. You know, then they back their car up and they pull forward like they think their building's playing mind tricks on them or something. And it's really just the light that's moving and changes the building, you know, all the time. We recently finished this school in South LA that burned down in a fire. Amongst other things, we took the concrete from the building, we cut it up into strips, and we basically built the whole new courtyard using the recycled concrete. Here you can kind of see the courtyard there. That planter is on an abandoned oil well, and this is the exact clearance that you need to service that oil well, but we've turned it into a courtyard. Now, this is also a bulletproof building. It's in the middle of South LA, where there's drive-by shootings and such. But if you look at the photo on the bottom left, they now film BMW commercials there. So to me, it's kind of interesting that, again, this high-end, product is coming to a very disadvantaged community to showcase their product. But it's a similar idea to Lipton. It's made out of perforated metal, and because of the curve, you get various forms of light, both from in front and behind, so the building is constantly changing and constantly moving. And you get this lovely kind of quality of light. At the same time, what that does is it provides a measure of security. So the classrooms all have courtyards and patios. You can see out just like a bug screen in your house, but you can't see in. And so the kids are secure, but they get this wonderful space that's well lit, cross ventilation, and it's secure. Another kind of light, that I think about is this idea of reflection. And this is by Robert Smithson, that he did in 1969 with mirrors. And it was always fascinating to me that he put these mirrors in the nature, the groundscape, and reflected the sky into it. And I had the opportunity for the first time to work on a project where I didn't have to worry about setbacks. This is an old client of mine who moved to Hillsborough, North Carolina, and bought 60 acres. He said, you can put the house wherever you want. And I was like, this is great. So I thought about this idea of reflection, not just like reflection, but even one of my students, when I taught back in Michigan, did this project with mirrors where they took the silver off the back of the mirror and you were able to see through the mirror and behind you all at the same time. This is our house there, and this is also the house. You can see it there, but it's different from the nature, but it's also one with it. And the facade changes all the time. It's constantly changing depending on the light quality of the building. And its part here is a good example that you see, this one picture you see behind you, you see the object and you see beyond it all at one time. And this has really, I think, tremendous impact on us and how it impacts our psyche and our emotions. And that's always what I'm trying to do, is to find ways that kind of have an effect on one instead of just looking at it, but how you feel when you're there. Another kind of beauty I call useful beauty. This is a spiny flower mantis, and it's like incredibly lovely and beautiful. But this is really a functional thing. It's meant to look like eyes, it's meant to look big. And I think there are ways to take useful beauty, which is really, how you articulate function, and make the beauty integral to its aesthetic qualities. Or take a thing's aesthetic qualities and make them emerge from its function or something closely related to its function, such as purpose, use, or end. This idea can embody the idea of physical and emotional beauty, and they're not mutually exclusive, so these things can overlap and cross over. This is a project in Hollywood, and that was a beautiful site with lots of views, but an inner city, so that required privacy. Most of the views were east and west, which were thermally bad for the building performance. And so we came up with this idea of making a shutter on a little tiny screen porch around the building. And we put that around the entire building. And I thought about my colleague at USC who teaches choreography, and he did these improvisational pieces with light and space, and he tried to create these shapes and movement, dancing with kind of light. And so we try to do something similar with our building using these screens, but once again, buildings that move generally don't work really well, so we kind of engaged our people who live there to move the building in a way. So the shutters can be operated by the tenants however they want. If they want to be private, they close them. If they want sun, they open them. If some don't care whether they're seen in the city running around naked in their building, others do. So in a way, the building redesigns itself every day. And the units are kind of simple inside. You know, they're light, well-lit, cross-ventilation. I always like to say, anyone out there hate natural light? You know, it's like, if you just do that, you're kind of a winner. Cross-ventilation, natural light are things which are really easy to do, which again are always winning strategies. We had some fun here too. These are the kitchens, the backsplashes. We bought some old skateboards and we cut them up, recycled them, made them into the backsplashes of the buildings. Another kind of like functional beauty, you know, I look at these things. We have an office in Florida, we work in Florida, but when you look at old buildings, you know, this to me is like a beautiful, beautiful building. It's so simple. It's like the idea of like just providing shade. In Florida, it's like we somehow have forgotten, like once we got air conditioning, we've forgotten about some very fundamental things because we can make up with them with kind of technology. So I'm always thinking back is like, how can we kind of get back to this in a new way? So we did a youth sports facility in Pompano Beach in Florida. This is it. Small building with a big porch. And we put a big porch around the whole building. And, you know, I try to explain to our client that, like, how important shade was. And I had a hard time. They said, we know it's shade, but do we really need it? You know, and I said, well, they're kids and you got soccer fields and everything. And so he finally bought off on the idea that we could have a big porch. But then I said, we also need fans because you want to cool people. So he said to me, do we need so many fans? And these are big fans and they make a lot of noise. And they were very worried about them. But when you go here today, everyone stands under this porch to watch their kids. Like most of them are crowded around the building. And the client was saying to me, you know, can you remind me why we didn't make a bigger porch? And I had to remind him, remember you wanted to have no porch? You know, so you can, again, these things, if you look at performance of your buildings or how they perform and you combine it with the aesthetics, then you will always come out a winner in what you do in design. This is a totally different scale, but the same idea. This is a competition we won in the Middle East. It's 1.5 million square foot Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture. Think of it as 8, 10-story buildings that are all tied together. But it was the same concept in the desert. You know, what's the best thing you can do is provide shade. So our idea was to kind of make the building about shade. And so we created what we called outdoor rooms that connected all of the buildings. It will produce 80% of its own power when it's done. We're going to start construction this year. But we're preconditioning the air by channeling it underground and then bringing it up. So we're taking hot desert air, we're cooling it with the earth, and not just bringing it up into the exterior shaded space, but then using it to reduce our mechanical loads on the building. So this is what some of those spaces will look like with dappled light in them. So here you can see the site. It has what we call the Viale. It's got 3,500 cars underground, but we double that for preconditioning the air. And then these are the different gardens that tie everything together. And each one of those buildings are the separate ministries. They all connect together, and the client told me, oh, we really don't want to connect to the other ministries. And I'm like, well, that's refreshing to know that we're not the only country that our government doesn't like to talk to each other. So again, you could see the big roof. This is it's a complete solar system on the roof. It provides shade and energy through these courtyards. And you can see the lower spaces, how they connect, and that's where you'll pre-cool the air for the buildings. The last kind of issue of beauty I call completely different, and it's judged by what I believe is a totally different standard, and I call that moral beauty. And it's not necessarily physical or emotional, but it's equally as powerful. It's something that's higher than ourselves, and I believe that everybody wants to have a purpose in life. It's just ingrained in us that we want to do better for each other. And scientists believe that altruistic behavior releases endorphins in the brain, producing a positive feeling known as the helper's high. Giving doles out several different happiness chemicals, including dopamine and endorphins, that give people a sense of euphoria, which is associated with tranquility, serenity, and inner peace. Scientific studies have shown that giving to others makes us happier than if we were to buy something for ourselves. Stephen Post, who's the director for the Center of Medical Humanities, has conducted this and proven this in studies at his university. Whoops.
None of us at the end of a hard day at work say, I think I'm going to go to my housing unit after work. No one says that. People say, I'm going home. And hopefully the residents who have the opportunity to be in a home of their own, leaving a life of homelessness behind, hopefully they feel those same sorts of connections to what a home represents. People are always a little worried about an affordable housing building going in or a supportive housing building going in. And I think all too often, homeless folks who have passed through various systems probably reflect the worst in design. This is the local welfare office. This is the local mental health office. This is the local probation office. At best, pretty utilitarian. At worst, spaces that communicate a very negative message to the people who engage in those spaces. And we think that's a model that should be changed. Design can be used creatively as a solution to ending homelessness, no matter where it exists. So this is a rectangular shaped building on a rectangular shaped lot. Nothing terribly unusual about it. Pretty commonplace actually when you think about it. But I think it says you can do something really imaginative and creative in terms of crafting that solution, even on a plain old apartment building lot. Angie mentioned that the facade of this building is actually a space, which is the first time I heard her describe it that way, and I thought, that is really pretty interesting. The facade is actually a space. This is a great looking building on this block, even without homeless folks in it. The fact that homeless people live here, I think, once again, promotes a very positive depiction of what supportive housing can and should look like, in my opinion.
I used to sneak in McDonald's and stuff, like after the restroom, and go in there and take a bath. My pride was really bad to just go and say I'm homeless. This building is marvelous. So I have family come visit. We have a community room. Like you want guests, your guests don't have to be inside your home. They can be inside the guest room, enjoy your company for a couple of hours, and send them on their merry way.
We created an aperture which was lifted up above the street so that it appears really open. There's a visual connection to the street, but not necessarily a physical connection.
You can come up on the roof and just relax your brains and get your thoughts out and make yourself better. This building right here will make you a better person.
We train our tenants to be architectural critics. She's doing a pretty good job. This is for all homeless vets, and it's called the 6 because the 6 in military terms means I got your back. And it's really important that we look at our veterans and we help them too. And their healing is housing people is part of the healing process. And most people who wind up on the streets don't go on the street with mental disabilities. They get them on the street. And the reason why they get them on the street is because the 2 biggest issues when you live on the street are security and hunger. And fentanyl solves that. It satiates your hunger and it keeps you awake. Unfortunately, schizophrenia is an outcome of that. So it's really better, that we house people, and really that's part of the healing process, as Mike will tell you. And what we try to do in our buildings is give people the opportunity to reintegrate in a way like we treat these courtyard buildings where a bit like a dance floor, where you have the opportunity to be in the middle of the dance floor, or you can be on the side in the community room looking out and participate in your own way. So it's really important that you don't force people, but you give them opportunities to engage with each other. We're working on these projects now in Miami Beach. These will be the largest affordable housing projects built in Miami Beach in almost 50 years. It is senior housing, and it's on this very wealthy island called Normandy Isles. We seem to get these projects in difficult sites where everyone comes out against, affordable housing. There, you can see here, they're across the street from each other, courtyard buildings. Same thing, we try to put a lot of landscape on our buildings. Anyone out there hate trees? It's proven that if you people feel better when they're around plants. So as a designer, I think if you just include good landscape with your buildings, it impacts people in a really meaningful way. So those are the 2 projects across from each other. This is what it should look like. It's about at this stage now. And it's got water views as well. So here it is. Whoops. Just to give you a little glimpse. Sorry. It takes its inspiration from a lot of the historic Miami modernism they call MIMO or MIMO in Miami. It's got This extends that courtyard through the back so that they can sit out on a terrace there and overlook the water. And you could see the other building coming along that's across the street. On the opposite end of the spectrum, in Venice, right by where I live, this is affordable or homeless housing for teenage or young adults. So when kids come out of foster care, or as they say, they term out, when they turn 18, they get put on the street. And most of them wind up back on the street because they have nowhere to go. This is a place for those kids to go and live. And we try to give them a place, that has dignity to it, embodies a lot of the qualities that I've talked about earlier. But again, to make a building that's full of landscape and being around landscape. We're always forced with tough budgets, and like a lot of other designers out there, about budgets. So most of our housing projects are made from stucco, and we're always finding ways to reinvent ourselves with stucco in this building. Some of you may have been to the Hollywood Walk of Fame and how it glitters. I wanted to make our building glitter, so we ordered a bunch of that glitter stuff, and I said, let's put it in the building. Well, we specified it, and the contractor came back with a price of like $125,000, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. It's just, you just throw it on there. Well, I let our project manager deal with it. Well, the price came down to about $100,000, and I could see our client was about to cut it out of the project. So on a Saturday, I went in our shop and I set up my phone, put it on record, and I recorded myself actually doing an installation. Monday, I gave it to the contractor, final price, $12,500. This is it here. You can see, again, as you move by it, the building changes and sparkles, and at night when the fire trucks go by, it actually glows red. And we have a similar kind of effect, like people are a bit puzzled by it, like, what is it? What's that building doing? And, we try to make it a good neighbor, and we often we get angry people at us. They're like, this building is too good for affordable housing, but it doesn't cost anymore. Like, good design doesn't mean it costs more. You can do this regardless of your budget. And I think about things, like I live right by here, and, while there are $5-10 million homes now in our neighborhood, where when I moved here, there were gang wars. And I like to say, when I lived here, we had helicopters every night because of gang wars. We still have the helicopters, except they're following Lindsay Lohan to court. So these projects are rare. They come out of the woodwork against them. But I think about, too, these kids, why can't they have a view? So while they don't get them from their units, we made a little extension on the upper circulation, and they can go up there and they get views of the Hollywood sign all the way to the beach. And they can hang out up there and have like the views that any multi-millionaire could have. I'm always surprised, like this project's been featured in the Times, a cover of Architectural Record. It's always interesting to me that people kind of forget about what the building is when the quality of the place is better. And so I think it's important for us to kind of show that these kind of projects can make our cities better. On the other end of the spectrum, this is where I think these projects should be. This is called inclusionary housing, so it has a mix of affordable and market rate. So it puts people who are teachers, firefighters, restaurant workers in places where they can't afford to live, but that they are needed to work. Joe Giovannini kind of described this building to me as a village within a village, or like a little city, and I like that term. I didn't think about it, but it is also a courtyard building. And we think about the shade, the light, so it's open to the sky, you get a view to the sky, but it's also shaded. There's another kind of beauty that I call social and moral beauty. And you can connect these with like intellectual power and critical thinking. And I think that's what we have as a group of people, as architects. And I think having purpose and working on things that are larger than any individual endeavor is also a powerful form of beauty. So our office is in Florida here. And if you look at the cities, the 25 most vulnerable cities to sea level issues, 23 of them are in Florida. And the number 8 is right by our office. And this is becoming a continuing issue for us. So this was after a recent storm. Those are our students from FAU. The students there have, for over the years, projects to build boats in their studio as a way of learning about design. Well, in this flood, this is how they got out of the building. But they also, as they're getting out of the building, everyone else is trying to get out too. So the students took all the boats and they made a lot of money taxiing people from the buildings to dry land in the neighborhood. So now at the school, they keep the boats all stocked up there, and when times are getting hard, they pray for a good rain. But there's more to it. It's not when it just rains. We call this sunny day flooding. And this is a mile away from the ocean. And what's happened here is that the high tides and certain conditions are sending water back in the storm drains, and it's coming up out of the storm drains miles away from the beach and flooding the area. So the city has put check valves on here, but what's happened is the rain accumulates in there, and now we have mosquito problems. Okay, so now they have trucks that go around and pump out the water. They dump it in the intercoastal, and it's killing all of the mangroves and stuff that sustain wildlife and keep our shoreline. So we undertook this idea of, can we contribute, can we do something to look at how we can merge nature and architecture? So we just, out of the blue, started writing articles, and we got a lot of coverage for the articles we wrote. They were covered in Architecture magazine. They put on the cover of Metropolis. We got the best article in Plan magazine, but it was being picked up in more common magazines that people read. So we started to just organize and do meetings and invite people, and I was shocked at the massive attendance we were getting of people who wanted to talk about this. And we included our students in this as well. And we had our students kind of work on projects that we then involved the city and other cities in the area. We did this kind of exhibit. This was one of our exhibits we did. We did many of them. This eventually manifested into a design and construction manual that we did for the city of Fort Lauderdale. They now have adopted this as their guiding principles for how to do development in the city. We've worked on this for 8 years. It's involved a lot of these people and more. We received a lot of grant money. to do this, but it's a very technical document that we kind of made more accessible to people. And we just came out now with a book. It's called Salty Urbanism. And I'm not going to explain everything, but just to show you a few things, what we try to do is to highlight in a beautiful way what the environment looked like, the different conditions that exist, and how we can develop strategies to adapt to new coastal conditions. So these are documents that show the different ecotypes that exist, and then we went through those ecotypes to show over time, cycled with mortgage cycles, how these neighborhoods could redevelop and transform to coexist better with the natural environment. So after we did all of this, the city said, wow, you guys are kind of experts on this. Can you help us with the problem, with like a real project? And they gave us this site. So it's right on the beach. And what's happened there is this is what's happening on the beach. So this is right after we were given the project. We had another storm. The city had just spent $9 million bringing in sand to re-nourish the beach, completely washed away in one night. And they can't put it back because the sand is contaminated. It picks up the oils on the street and so forth. So what we've explained to the city is like, this is what we've done in our coastal environments. So we've taken a environment that used to be full of dunes and natural mitigators to this happening, and we've kind of flattened it. And we have water that comes up, we have water that comes from the coast, and we have rain that comes down. So we're getting bombed in every direction and created the worst scenario for this to happen in our urban environment. So what we try to do with our project is to change that. And I explain it a bit more like a heart valve. You know, it's not replacing nature, but it's assisting and helping to change from what you see on the left to on the right. So this is a stormwater mitigator. It's actually a kids' park on the beach, and it helps deal with storm surge and so forth. It's just finished now, so this is it. It also has an observatory in it and a place for adults and lots of shade as well. So that acts as a gathering place where the families can hang out with their kids in shade and also have some kind of a place of beauty that also contributes more positively to our natural environment. And here's just some views you can kind of see of the park and the observatory up top. I'm going to leave you today with a quote by a French philosopher who wrote in a book that he called The Architecture of Happiness. And he wrote about the philosophical and psychological relationship between architecture and our identities. He said that buildings that we admire are ultimately those which, in a variety of ways, extol the values we think worthwhile, whether through material innovation, form, color, or service to society. Qualities such as friendliness, kindness, subtlety, strength, and intelligence are part of what we believe to be beautiful. Our sense of beauty and our understanding of the nature of what is good are intertwined and inseparable. Beauty is the promise of happiness. Happiness is one of our fundamental human needs, and beauty fulfills that promise. That's why I believe beauty matters. Thank you very much.
Okay, so you'll notice there's a mic stand here and a mic stand here. And Larry will take a few questions before we break for reception. So. I warned him that we're slow starters on the questions, but once we get going, it's relentless.
It's okay. All right.
Hey guys, I'm Haley. Can't say I didn't work hard to get up here. I'm 5 years out of school, graduated from Virginia Tech. It's good to be back. But with that lens of being new to the profession, I wanted to ask you to look back 30 years ago when you started off. I just wanted to ask, what was your firm like? What were those first projects? Because it's amazing to see where you guys came from and where you are now. So just a little bit more storytelling on that perspective.
I had no idea what I was doing. If you had asked me back then, would I ever be doing affordable housing? I would say, are you out of your mind? I would never do that. And it's, it's a journey. And I think what I've learned over time is that if you allow yourself to take advantage of things that are put before you, you will go very far in your career. I've done a lot of things. If you ask me, would I ever live in Los Angeles? I would say the same thing. Are you out of your mind? I never thought I would live there. I just followed my wife to grad school there. I was a good husband, So now I can't imagine being anywhere else. So I think part of it is a journey, and I always knew I wanted to do something, but it was not a clear picture. And the picture emerges. It's kind of just like a design. When I design something, I don't really know what I'm doing, but through work, you get there eventually. And I think my career's been the same way. So none of it was anything that I had imagined.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing.
No more questions. Okay, hold on, okay.
Pardon the attire, I just got out of a sporting event. First off, thank you very much for the lecture. I really appreciated you coming all the way here and showing us your amazing work. And I remember your quote, I believe it's on the playfulness in architecture, both with your people that interacting with it, but then also through the design process of it. And kind of a debate a little bit in the studio I'm in right now is a little bit of professionalism versus playfulness, because I feel like now with the in-between period of being a college student, I think it's a little bit like, oh yeah, it's time to get serious. It's time to, put the big boy or big girl pants on and start actually making life decisions, and leave that sort of childlike playfulness behind. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit on your opinion about playfulness and professionalism, and what it means to be brave enough to play both as a designer and as someone interacting with something.
Okay, I'll try. To start with, I always think that what we do, and in terms of we sometimes can be too serious. In other words, like we take what we do and think it's kind of for the championship of the free world. Okay, so if you make a mistake, so what? You know, okay, no one's gonna die. You know, we have a client who we work over and over with on affordable housing projects, and she lets us do one new thing on every project we do with her. So I had this idea, you know, okay, if we can limit the plumbing fixtures, we can save a ton of money, you know, and I explained this to her. She goes, okay. So we designed a bathroom that compartmentalized the fixture so we could have less bathrooms and more shared components. We did it on a 5-story building, you know, 5 units basically in one part of the building. Total disaster, okay? It didn't work at all, okay? People still live there. No one's hurt, no one's died, they still use it. You know, maybe they're a little bit inconvenient, but if you don't try, you don't gain anything. And so we're always trying, and we keep in mind that, like, don't be afraid to fail, you know, and it's okay because it's not really failure, it's just another iteration, you know. It's like when you do your project, if something doesn't work out, you redo it. And it's okay to, I think, fail, and like a lot of the things we do, we don't do them in a vacuum. We don't just, it doesn't show up and our client sees them. They're part of it. And so a lot of times when we fail, our clients feel worse than we do because they think they've failed, you know, because they're kind of part of it. So I think if you talk to your clients, I found they go along with it, you know. If you are trying to do something good, it's not like you're saying, let's just do this because, you know, everyone on the world will see it, okay? That's not a good motive, you know, but if you have some objective or some motive, people, they understand that, you know. So I think that's always how we've done it. It's been a genuine kind of way to try and improve things. In terms of the playfulness, you know, like that school I showed, it's all yellow. And it was kind of interesting too, because the contractor would call up, you know, or they'd submit the hardware, and, you know, they just got to the point, you know, okay, is it anodized aluminum? Oh, wait, you want the hinges yellow, right? Yeah, of course we do. Everything's yellow, you know, and so why not? That neighborhood there is depressing. Every building there is gray. You know, we wanted to be a bright spot in the community. And, you know, I just explained it to our client. Why can't we be something that is good for the community? Why do we need to disappear and be gray, you know? And I say, you know, it'll be good for the community. You know, and it turns out it is. Everyone loves that building. They call it the yellow building in the community. Never had a single graffiti on the building, you know. So it's, I guess you could call it playful, but it's for us serious too. I don't think it's either professional or playful. It can be both. If you're just kind of saying, you know, well, I just want to make it playful, you know, maybe that's a different argument. But I have these conversations too. It's not always easy. Recently, I didn't show up, but we have a building that has a courtyard, and it's got a kids' play area in the middle of the courtyard. And it's, you know, play surface, and we made it very colorful. And the client said, oh, can't we just make it like sort of blue and gray? I'm like, I mean, the poor kids, give them something, you know, like to start their life. Do they have to, you know, be that way? And, you know, they finally come around. But sometimes people get scared of color, and I think it's just, if you talk through it, I think it's important. Like, why not? Why can't things be playful? I mean, and be professional too. It doesn't mean you're not serious about what you do. So if you, and I would say too, if that's something you're passionate about, you should always follow your passion, you know, and don't be dissuaded, because a lot of people are, it's so interesting, we're so creative, our profession, but everyone wants us to conform, you know, even within. But if you believe in something, you don't let people dissuade you from doing it, even if they say, I think you're wrong. If you know, I tell my students, I always ask them in the question, I say, okay, I want you to tell me when you are wrong in design with your project. Tell me when you're wrong. Okay, and I get every answer under the sun except the right answer, which is when you don't believe in what you're doing. When you believe in what you're doing, you're always right. You can't be wrong because you believe in it, you know, and so like you have to believe in what you're doing. I hope that answers it.
It starts. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So thank you for this amazing talk and sharing this fantastic work. So my name is Sida, and I'm currently teaching second year undergraduate studio. And I can see like light is an important topic in your works. So I was wondering, and also I can hear like many students that talk to me, like they also want to use light in their design. So I was wondering if you have any suggestions for students, like how to.
It's really hard because it's an intangible, just like touch. Like, I don't think we deal with that enough. Like touch, you know, when you touch something, you never forget it. And light is the same kind of way. It's an intangible. Like when you experience it, it has an effect on you. You know, and like I can honestly, when I went to work for Paul Rudolph and he talked about light, and he would draw it, I understood what he was saying, but I really didn't get it till I went into his buildings. And I'm like, wow, this is what you mean, you know? And so it's hard, you know? It's taken me a career to sort of figure it out. And there, again, the same thing, there's no right light. It's like how you manage it and create it, you know, and I think it's really difficult to show, like in your design. It's like you can talk about it a lot until you see it. It's like it's really hard, but I think it's something we forget about a lot, but we should really work towards.
So in my opinion, it's like probably the students can start from experience. Like light.
And we have a lot better tools now where you can, you know, you can simulate certain things, but I found even that doesn't quite, you know, get to your heart, you know, which is how it really affects you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I saw that most of your work is about the people, which is something awesome that we designed for the people. But I want to ask, how do you make sure that you're designing around user-centric design? Do you like start by design shred? Do you meet with the users more other than the client? How do you manage it?
It's a combination of there's not one size fits all. Like on that project for the 6, you know, that has the aperture. You know, I really personally wanted to connect the courtyard to the street there. And my original design had more of a stair that went right down to the street. And the tenants told me that they didn't like it, you know, and I asked them why. They said, well, you know, we've lived on the street our whole life. It's dangerous to us. We don't feel safe, you know, on the street. And, you know, I believed it should connect to the street, but I also believe that they were right too. So I didn't talk about it, but we made that building has stepped planters so that there's no railings on that courtyard. So when you're up there, you actually feel like you're on the street, but you're secure from the street. And that's really what they wanted. They wanted the security of not like, you know, what they were used to living on the street. So in that case, we talk to them. Sometimes we don't. It just varies from project to project. And, but it's important to listen to people, even if it's not for the project specific. So I've spent time with our tenant population, you know, to the point where I know enough about like their issues or a lot of their issues. And I think understanding what you're doing might be more important than something specific to the project.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.